What would you do if a simple act of kindness turned your life upside down? In a small, quiet town, Jack Carter, a struggling single dad with a heart of gold, had no idea how drastically his world would change when he helped a frightened stranger escape a dangerous situation. But what happens when that stranger turns out to be a powerful billionaire, hiding secrets that could endanger them both? This is a story about courage, love, and the ripple effects of kindness. As Jack navigates the challenges of protecting his daughter and uncovering the truth, he discovers that sometimes life's greatest rewards come when we least expect them. If you love stories that inspire, touch the heart, and keep you on the edge of your seat, don't miss this journey. Hit the subscribe button and stay with us until the end. You won't want to miss a single moment of this unforgettable tale. Now let's dive into a struggling single dad helped a woman escape a kidnapping. He had no idea that she was a CEO. The gas station lights flickered faintly against the deep black sky as Jack wiped his hands on a rag, the scent of oil and gasoline clinging to his clothes. It was nearing midnight, and the world outside was silent, save for the occasional rustle of wind through the sparse trees lining the highway. Jack, a man of solid build and gentle eyes, moved with the precision of someone accustomed to long hours. He was tired, but the thought of his 8-year-old daughter Emma waiting for him at home kept him going. Jack glanced at the old clock on the wall. It was 11:42 p.m. "Almost there," he muttered, gathering his tools and preparing to lock up. The night had been uneventful, a rare blessing in his line of work. Running a small gas station wasn't glamorous, but it put food on the table and kept a roof over their heads. As he reached for the light switch, a faint sound caught his attention. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then it came again. Weak, desperate, a voice, a cry for help. Jack froze, his ears straining. The sound grew louder, accompanied by hurried footsteps. Suddenly, the glass door of the station slammed open. A woman stumbled inside, clutching the doorframe for support. Her face was pale, her breathing erratic, and her eyes darted wildly around the room. She looked as though she had been running for miles. Her once elegant dress was torn, and there was a faint bruise forming on her temple. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "Help me." Jack immediately stepped forward, his instincts kicking in. "Ma'am, are you hurt? What happened?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The woman swayed unsteadily, and Jack reached out to steady her. She flinched at his touch, her fear palpable. "They're coming," she choked out before her legs gave way. Jack caught her just in time, lowering her to the floor. His mind raced. Who was they? What kind of trouble had this woman gotten into, and why had she chosen his station as her refuge? "All right, you're safe now," Jack said, trying to reassure her. "Let me get you some water." He hurried behind the counter, grabbed a bottle from the small fridge, and returned. The woman sipped shakily, her hands trembling. Before Jack could press, her further headlights pierced the darkness outside. A black SUV rolled into the station parking lot, its engine humming ominously. Jack's stomach tightened. The vehicle didn't belong to any of his regular customers, and it wasn't the kind of car you saw often in their quiet little town. The woman's eyes widened in terror. "It's them," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack looked out the window, his heart pounding. 2 men stepped out of the SUV, their silhouettes sharp against the beams of the headlights. They moved with purpose, scanning the area. Jack could see the glint of something metallic at one man's hip. A weapon, perhaps. He didn't have time to think. He acted. "Stay low," he instructed the woman. "Follow me." He led her to the back of the station, where a small storage room held spare parts and cleaning supplies. He eased her inside and whispered, "Stay here. Don't make a sound. I'll handle this." The woman grabbed his arm, her eyes pleading. Don't go out there. They'll hurt you." Jack shook his head. "I've got to make sure they don't come in here. Just trust me." Closing the door quietly, Jack stepped back into the main area of the station, his mind racing. He wasn't a fighter, but he had learned to think on his feet. Years of being a single father had honed his ability to stay calm under pressure. The two men entered, their heavy boots echoing against the tiled floor. One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, approached the counter. "Hey there," he said, his voice oily. "We're looking for someone. A woman. You seen anyone come through here tonight?" Jack kept his expression neutral. "Nope, pretty quiet night." The man's eyes narrowed as he glanced around the station. "You sure about that?" "Positive," Jack replied, crossing his arms. "Just me here." The second man, taller and leaner, circled the room, his gaze scrutinizing every corner. Jack's heart raced as the man drew closer to the storage room door. "Well," the burly man said, stepping closer to Jack, "if you do see her, you'd better let us know. She's important." "I'll keep that in mind," Jack said evenly. The lean man stopped in front of the storage room, his hand reaching for the door handle. Jack's pulse quickened. "Hey," Jack called out, forcing a casual tone. "If you're looking for snacks, they're by the register. Got some fresh coffee, too." The man hesitated, glancing back at Jack. The burly man grunted. "We're good. Let's go." Relief washed over Jack as the two men exited the station. He waited until the SUV's tail lights disappeared into the night before returning to the storage room. The woman was huddled in the corner, her knees drawn to her chest. When Jack opened the door, she looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "They're gone," Jack said softly. "But we need to get you out of here. It's not safe." She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." Jack helped her to her feet and led her to his truck. As they drove off into the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn he wasn't prepared for. The truck hummed softly as Jack drove along the empty highway, his eyes scanning the road ahead while his mind raced. The woman in the passenger seat sat slumped against the window, her breathing shallow, her face pale under the dim glow of the dashboard lights. She was clearly exhausted, and whatever she had been through had taken a heavy toll. Jack glanced at her briefly, then refocused on the road. He had no idea who she was, or what kind of trouble she was in, but it was clear she needed help, and for reasons he couldn't quite articulate, he felt compelled to protect her. Maybe it was his own upbringing. His parents had always taught him to lend a hand when someone was in need, or maybe it was because he saw something familiar in her vulnerability, a reminder of how fragile life could be. A neon sign appeared. In the distance, flickering against the darkness. Roadside motel, vacancy. Jack slowed the truck and turned into the gravel lot. The motel was small and unassuming, the kind of place where no one asked questions, perfect for keeping a low profile. As he parked, the woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked in confusion before looking at Jack, her voice barely a whisper. Where are we?" "Just a safe place to rest for the night," Jack replied, his tone calm and steady. "You've been through a lot. Let's get you inside." He helped her out of the truck, noticing how unsteady she was on her feet. She leaned on him for support as they approached the motel office. Inside, an older man sat behind the counter, watching a small TV. He barely looked up as Jack slid some cash across the desk and asked for a room. Minutes later, they were in a modest room with faded wallpaper and a single bed. Jack guided the woman to sit down, then grabbed a chair for himself. "You need anything? Water? Food?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. I don't even know where to start." Jack leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Take your time," he said gently. "Whatever it is, you're safe now." For a moment she said nothing, her hands gripping the edge of the bed. Then her voice broke the silence. "They were going to kill me." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how I got away, or why they didn't finish the job." Jack's Jaw tightened. Whoever they were, they had clearly done a number on her. "Do you know who they are?" he asked cautiously. She hesitated, then shook her head. I think so, but I'm not sure. Everything's a blur." Jack nodded, sensing her reluctance to share more. He didn't push. Instead, he stood and grabbed a bottle of water from the small fridge. Handing it to her, he said, "Drink this. You need to stay hydrated." She took the bottle with trembling hands, managing a faint, "Thank you." Jack watched her for a moment before stepping to the window. The parking lot was empty except for his truck and a few other cars. Still, her knees prickled at the back of his neck. As she sipped the water, Jack turned back to her. "You should get some rest. I'll keep watch." "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You don't even know me." Jack gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Maybe not, but I know what it's like to feel like the world's against you. Sometimes we all need someone to help us out of the dark." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she nodded and lay down on the bed. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing steadying. Jack sat by the window, his gaze fixed on the parking lot. The quiet of the night felt almost too perfect, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the hours ticked by, his thoughts drifted to Emma. She was likely fast asleep at home, unaware of the strange turn his night had taken. Jack sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Life hadn't been easy since he lost his wife. Balancing work, parenting, and grief had left little room for anything else. Yet here he was, risking his safety for a stranger. It wasn't logical, but it felt like the right thing to do. His musings were interrupted by the low rumble of an engine. Jack's eyes snapped to the parking lot, where a black sedan rolled in. Its windows were tinted, and the way it crept into the lot sent a chill down his spine. He stood slowly, his heart pounding. The sedan parked a few spaces away, its engine idling. No one got out. Jack's grip on the curtain tightened as he peered. Outside, trying to get a better look without drawing attention, a figure finally emerged from the driver's seat, a tall man in a dark jacket. He walked toward the motel office, his movements deliberate. Jack's instincts screamed danger. Turning back to the woman, he shook her shoulder gently. "Wake up! We've got to go." She stirred, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. What's happening?" "Trouble," Jack said simply. "Can you walk?" She nodded, though her movements were sluggish. Jack grabbed the keys to his truck and helped her to her feet. As they slipped out the back door of the motel, he heard the office door chime. The man was inside now, likely asking questions. Jack led her to the truck as quickly and quietly as possible. They climbed in, and he started the engine. The rumble of the truck seemed deafening in the still night. He backed out slowly, careful not to draw attention, then drove off, the motel fading into the distance. For a while, neither of them spoke. The woman sat clutching the bottle of water, her knuckles white. Jack kept his eyes on the road, his mind racing. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice trembling. Jack glanced at her briefly, his expression unreadable. "Just hang in there," he said. "We'll figure this out." The night was quiet as Jack's truck rolled down the winding suburban road, its headlights cutting through the darkness. In the passenger seat, the woman, still unnamed to him, sat silently, her hands clutching the water bottle he had given her. The adrenaline from their escape had waned, leaving her looking exhausted yet tense, her eyes darting to every shadow outside the window. Jack stole a glance at her as they neared his house. "It's not much," he said, his voice low. "But it's safe. My daughter's asleep, so try to keep things quiet, all right?" The woman nodded, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." The truck pulled into the driveway of a small, modest house with peeling paint and a well-worn porch. The porch light flickered slightly, casting a soft glow over the front steps. Jack parked, cut the engine, and exhaled. "This way," he said, stepping out and opening the passenger door for her. She hesitated for a moment, then followed him inside, her steps cautious. The warm scent of wood and faint traces of lavender greeted her, a comforting contrast to the sterile motels she was accustomed to. As Jack shut the door quietly, a small voice broke the silence. "Daddy?" A little girl with tousled blonde hair and sleepy eyes peeked out from the hallway, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit. Jack's face softened immediately. "Emma, sweetheart, why are you up?" "It's late." "I heard the truck," she said, rubbing her eyes. Her gaze shifted to the woman, curiosity lighting up her small face. "Who's that?" Jack walked over and scooped Emma into his arms. "Just someone who needs a little help, that's all. She's going to stay here for a bit." Emma's eyes widened with excitement. "You can stay in my room if you want," she offered earnestly. "I can sleep on the couch." The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Thank you, but I'll be fine wherever your dad puts me." Jack chuckled. "All right, kiddo, back to bed. Big day tomorrow." Emma pouted but nodded, casting one last curious glance at the woman before heading back down the hallway. Jack showed the woman to a small guest room at the back of the house. The room was simple, just a twin bed, a dresser, and a window with worn curtains. But it was clean and quiet. "It's not the Ritz, but it'll do," Jack said. She looked around, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since they'd met. "It's perfect, really, thank you," Jack nodded. "I'll grab some blankets and water. You should get some rest." When he returned with a pile of neatly folded blankets, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Why are you doing this?" Jack paused, then shrugged. "Because you needed help, and because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to look my daughter in the eye tomorrow morning." Her lips parted as if to say something, but no words came. Instead, she simply nodded, a hint of gratitude in her tired eyes. The next morning, Jack was up early, preparing breakfast for Emma before school. The woman stayed in the guest room, the door closed. He didn't want to pressure her into talking, but knew he needed answers eventually. As Emma ate her cereal, she looked up at Jack. "Daddy, do you think she's a princess?" Jack blinked, caught off guard. "A princess? Why would you think that?" Emma giggled. "She's really pretty and she talks fancy, like the people on TV." Jack laughed softly, ruffling her hair. "Finish your breakfast, kiddo." After dropping Emma off at school, Jack returned home. The woman was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. Her hair was brushed, and her clothes, though wrinkled, looked less disheveled. She looked up as he entered. "Morning," she said quietly. "Morning," Jack replied, pouring himself a cup of coffee. He sat across from her, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. "I'll leave soon," she said suddenly. "I don't want to bring trouble here." "You already have," Jack said bluntly, though not unkindly. "But you're not leaving until I know you'll be safe." Her eyes dropped to the table. "I don't even know if that's possible." That evening, Jack was tidying up the guest room after she had gone to take a shower. As he folded a blanket, something shiny caught his eye. Half hidden under the bed was a small leather clutch. Curiosity piqued. He opened it and found a sleek, high-tech phone inside, the kind of device you didn't just pick up at a store. Alongside it was a case containing a necklace, delicate with a pendant encrusted in diamonds. Jack's brows furrowed. Whoever she wasn't just an ordinary woman in trouble. When she returned to the room, her hair damp and face freshly scrubbed, Jack was waiting for her, holding the clutch. "Mind explaining this?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. She froze, her gaze flicking to the items in his hand. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "I'm not asking to pry," Jack said. "But if I'm putting myself and my daughter at risk, I need to know the truth. Who are you, really, and why are they after you?" Her shoulders sagged, the weight of her secrets pressing visibly down on her. She met his gaze, her eyes filled, with something between fear and resignation. It's complicated, she began, her voice trembling. The air in the small house was thick with tension. Jack stood by the kitchen counter, his arms crossed, waiting for an answer. The leather clutch he had found lay on the table, its contents, an expensive phone and the glittering necklace, laid bare. Across from him, Victoria sat with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles pale. "I asked you a simple question," Jack said evenly, though his voice carried an edge of frustration. "Who are you, really? And why are people chasing you?" Victoria's eyes darted to the phone, then back to Jack. She inhaled deeply, her lips parting as though she was about to speak. But then she hesitated. "I told you," she began, her voice soft but firm. "I'm someone who got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time." Jack's jaw tightened. "That's not an answer." She shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. "It's the truth." Jack exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I'm not trying to pry into your life, but my daughter is in this house. If you're bringing trouble here, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." Victoria flinched at the mention of Emma. "I would never put her in danger," she said, her voice rising slightly. Jack leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Then tell me what I'm up against, because right now it feels like you're keeping secrets that could get us all killed." Before Victoria could respond, Jack's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen. An unknown number. His brow furrowed as he picked it up, hesitating for a moment before answering. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a low, menacing voice spoke. "Mr. Carter, isn't it? You've got something of ours." Jack's grip on the phone tightened. "Who is this?" "You know who we are," the voice continued, ignoring the question. "And you know what we want. Hand over the woman, and this can all be over. Nice and easy." Jack's heart pounded, but his voice remained steady. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," the voice snapped. "We know she's there. You've got until tonight to deliver her. If you don't—" The line went silent for a moment. Then the voice returned, colder than before. "We'll find you. And trust me, you won't like how it ends." The call ended abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Jack lowered the phone slowly, his mind racing. What did they say? Victoria's voice broke through the silence, sharp and filled with urgency. Jack turned to her, his expression unreadable. "They know you're here. They want me to hand you over." Victoria's face drained of color. She stood quickly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You can't let them find me," she said, her voice trembling. Jack studied her carefully. "You seem to know a lot more about them than you're letting on. Care to explain?" She froze, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. I can't. You can't or you won't." Jack pressed. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "It's complicated," she said finally. "If I tell you, it'll only make things worse. For you. For Emma." Jack shook his head, his patience wearing thin. "Things are already bad, Victoria. I just got a death threat from someone who knows where I live. So don't stand there and tell me it'll get worse when you're not even giving me the full story." Victoria's shoulders sagged, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She turned away, pacing the small kitchen. Finally, she stopped, her back to Jack. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said quietly. "I didn't ask for any of it." Jack stepped closer, his tone softening. "Then help me understand. Who are they? Why are they after you?" Victoria turned to face him, her expression a mix of fear and desperation. "They're connected to my work," she admitted. "I can't say more than that, but they want something from me, something I have, or at least they think I do." Jack frowned. "And the necklace, the phone, are those connected too?" Victoria hesitated, then nodded slowly. "The phone has information on it, sensitive information. If it falls into the wrong hands—" She trailed off, her meaning clear. Jack stared at her, trying to process everything. He didn't know the full story, but he knew enough to understand that Victoria was in serious danger, and by extension so was he. "All right," he said finally. "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to stay here, keep a low profile, and figure out your next move. I'll handle the rest." Victoria's eyes widened. "You can't—" "I can," Jack interrupted firmly. "And I will. I've dealt with worse than a couple of hired thugs, but I need you to trust me, and I need you to be honest from now on." She nodded, though doubt lingered in her expression. I don't know how to thank you." "Don't," Jack said, simply. "Just stay safe." As Jack left the room, his phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from the same unknown number. "You're running out of time, Carter." Jack stared at the message, his jaw tightening. Whatever danger Victoria had brought into his life, he wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever. The morning air was still and heavy, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Jack stood in the kitchen, a steaming mug of coffee in his hands. He hadn't slept much, his mind racing with the events of the past few days. Across the table, Victoria sat quietly, her fingers wrapped around her own cup. Her eyes, though calmer than the night before, still carried a shadow of fear. Emma's cheerful voice broke the silence as she skipped into the room, her stuffed rabbit in tow. "Good morning," she chirped, climbing onto her usual chair. Jack managed a smile. "Morning, kiddo. Cereal okay?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, her attention shifting to Victoria. "Are you feeling better today?" she asked innocently. Victoria hesitated, then smiled softly. "Yes, thank you, Emma. You're very kind." Jack watched the exchange, his protective instincts flaring. He had to figure out a way to end this situation before it got worse. Later that morning, as Emma played in the backyard, Jack stood at the window, sipping his coffee. Something caught his eye. A black SUV idling at the end of the street. It was the same type of vehicle he had seen the night Victoria stumbled into his gas station. His stomach tightened. He set the mug down and moved closer to the window, his gaze fixed on the vehicle. The driver's window was down slightly, but he couldn't make out the figure inside. "Jack?" Victoria's voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to see her standing in the doorway, her expression wary. "There's a car outside," he said, his tone low. "Same type as the one from before." Her face paled and she moved to the window, peeking out from behind the curtain. "They found us," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. Jack placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Stay calm. I'll handle it." The SUV crept forward, stopping just across the street. Jack's jaw tightened as two men stepped out, their movements deliberate. He recognized one of them as the man who had questioned him at the gas station. "Stay inside," Jack instructed Victoria firmly. "Keep Emma in the house." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Talk to them," Jack said simply, though he knew it wouldn't be that easy. He stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind him. The two men were already halfway up the driveway, their eyes locked on him. Well, the taller one said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Looks like you've been keeping busy, Carter." Jack crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. "You're trespassing. Turn around and leave." The second man, stockier and more aggressive-looking, laughed. "We're not here to chat, pal. Just hand over the lady and we'll be on our way." Jack's gaze hardened. "You're not taking her, and you're not stepping another foot onto my property." The smirk vanished from the taller man's face. "We're trying to do this the easy way. Don't make it hard." Jack glanced toward the house, his heart pounding. He needed to buy time. "All right," Jack said slowly, raising his hands. "Let's talk, but not here. Let's take it down the road." The men exchanged a glance, clearly suspicious. "What's your angle, Carter?" "No angle," Jack replied evenly. "You want me to cooperate? Fine, but not here, not with my kid inside." The taller man hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but if you're playing us—" Jack didn't let him finish. "Let's go," he said, stepping off the porch and heading toward the SUV. Once they were a safe distance down the road, Jack turned to face them. "Look, I don't know what she did to piss you off, but you're not getting her. So why don't you save us all the trouble and back off?" the stocky man sneered. "You think you're some kind of hero. You don't know who you're dealing with." Jack held his ground. "Maybe not, but I know enough to see you're scared of her. That's why you're chasing her down instead of facing her directly." The comment struck a nerve. The taller man's expression darkened, but before he could respond, Jack's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. A text from Victoria. "They're armed. Don't let them take you." Jack's pulse quickened, but he remained outwardly calm. "This is your last chance," he said. "Walk away." The stocky man reached into his jacket, but Jack was faster. He lunged forward, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it, forcing him to drop the object, a knife. The taller man moved to intervene, but Jack turned sharply, his fist connecting with the man's jaw. Both men staggered back, momentarily. "Stunned. You've got 1 minute to get out of here," Jack said, his voice ice-cold. The men exchanged a glance, then scrambled back to the SUV. The vehicle roared to life and sped off, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Jack returned to the house, his adrenaline still pumping. Victoria met him at the door, her face etched with worry. "Are you okay?" "Fine," he said gruffly, brushing past her. She followed him into the living room. "Jack, I need to tell you something." He turned to face her, his eyes narrowing. "What?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Those men, they're not just random thugs. They're working for someone inside my company." Jack froze, her words sinking in. "What are you talking about?" Victoria's voice trembled. "I don't know who I can trust anymore, but someone in my inner circle wants me out of the picture. And they're willing to go to any lengths to make that happen." Jack stared at her, his mind reeling. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "I was trying to protect you," she said softly. "But now I see I can't do this alone." Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "We can't stay here," he said finally. "Pack your things. We're leaving tonight." Victoria nodded, her expression resolute. "Where will we go?" "Somewhere. They won't find us," Jack replied. "But wherever it is, we're not stopping until we figure out how to end this." The truck hummed steadily as Jack drove down the quiet highway. The sun had begun its slow descent, casting a warm orange glow across the landscape. Beside him, Victoria sat in silence, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She seemed calmer now, though. The tension in her posture suggested that her mind was far from at ease. Jack glanced at her briefly, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. He had spent most of the day driving, putting as much distance as possible between them and the danger that loomed behind. For the past few hours, neither had spoken much, their thoughts seemingly consumed by the weight of their situation. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice almost drowned out by the hum of the engine. Jack glanced at her again, raising an eyebrow. "For what?" "For everything," she replied. "For helping me. For putting yourself at risk when you didn't have to." She paused, then added, "Not many people would do that." Jack shrugged. "It's what anyone decent would do." Victoria let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You'd be surprised how many people turn the other way when things get complicated." They drove a little further before Jack spoke again. "You keep saying people are after you, but you haven't told me why. What exactly is going on?" Victoria hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. "It's not easy to explain," she said finally. "Try me," Jack replied. She sighed, leaning back against the seat. "I run a company, a big one. It's not just about making money. It's about staying ahead, outsmarting the competition, and constantly proving that I belong in a world dominated by people who don't think I deserve to be there." Jack didn't respond immediately, letting her words sink in. "Sounds like "A lot of pressure," he said eventually. "It is," she admitted, "and somewhere along the way I made enemies, people who would do anything to see me fail. That's who's after me. They think I have something that could ruin them." Jack glanced at her, his brow furrowed. "Do you?" Victoria hesitated again before shaking her head. "Not in the way they think, but that doesn't matter to them. As long as I'm a threat, they won't stop." For a while, neither of them spoke, the weight of her words settling between them. Then Jack broke the silence. "I get it," he said quietly. Victoria looked at him, surprised. "You do?" Jack nodded. "Maybe not the business part, but I get what it's like to have to fight, to carry everything on your shoulders because no one else will." He paused, his grip tightening on the wheel. "After my wife died, I had to figure out how to keep going. I had a daughter to take care of, bills to pay, a life to rebuild. It wasn't easy, but I didn't have a choice. You just do what you have to do." Victoria studied him, her expression softening. "You must love her a lot," she said. "Emma," Jack smiled faintly. "She's everything. Every decision I've made since the day she was born has been for her." Victoria nodded, her gaze dropping to her lap. "I envy that," she admitted. "Having someone who makes it all worth it." The truck pulled into the gravel lot of a roadside diner, its neon sign flickering against the twilight. Jack killed the engine and turned to Victoria. "We'll stop here for a bit, get something to eat, stretch our legs." Victoria nodded, following him inside. The diner was quiet, with only a handful of customers scattered across the booths. A waitress greeted them with a tired smile and led them to a corner table. As they waited for their food, Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression darkening. "Excuse me," she murmured, standing and stepping outside. "To take the call." Jack watched her go, a gnawing sense of unease settling in his gut. Outside, Victoria answered the call, her voice sharp and low. "What is it?" A frantic voice on the other end replied, "We've got a problem. The board is in chaos. They're calling for an emergency meeting." Victoria's heart sank. "Why?" "Someone leaked sensitive information. Details about the contracts with our biggest partners. The media's already picking it up." Victoria clenched her jaw. "Do we know who's behind it?" "Not yet, but—" The voice hesitated. "It might be someone on the inside. And whoever it is, they're feeding this to the same people who are after you." Victoria's grip on the phone tightened. "Keep me updated. I'll handle it." As she ended the call, she turned to find Jack leaning against the diner's exterior wall, his arms crossed. "You all right?" he asked, his voice calm but probing. Victoria hesitated, then nodded. "Just work stuff." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Work stuff that ties back to the people chasing you?" Victoria froze, her eyes widening. "How?" "I overheard enough," Jack said. "This isn't just about you, is it? It's about your company. Your whole world is at war, and they've dragged me into the middle of it." "I didn't mean to," Victoria said quickly. "I never wanted anyone else involved." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Well, it's too late for that now, so what's the plan?" Victoria stared at him, her defenses crumbling. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've been running so long, I don't even know what I'm running toward anymore." Jack's gaze softened. "Then stop running. Figure out what you're fighting for. And if you can't do it alone, let me help." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away, nodding. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack nodded, his resolve hardening. "We'll figure this out. Together." As they returned to the diner, the flickering neon light above cast their shadows on the ground, two silhouettes standing side by side against the encroaching darkness. The road was rough, the truck rattling as it made its way through the narrow streets of a small, sleepy town. The faint hum of distant machinery mixed with the soft chirping of birds, creating an oddly peaceful contrast to the tension simmering inside the vehicle. Jack glanced at the dashboard, his frown deepening. "We need to stop," he said, pulling into the gravel lot of a local garage. "The truck's running hot. I don't want us breaking down in the middle of nowhere." Victoria nodded, her gaze distant. She had barely spoken since they left the diner, her thoughts seemingly consumed by the call that had exposed just how deep the conspiracy ran. Jack could see the strain in her posture, the way her fingers tightened around the edge of her seat, as if bracing for something inevitable. The garage owner, a wiry man named Earl, greeted them with a curious glance, but didn't ask too many questions. Jack explained the situation, radiator trouble, maybe more, and offered to help with the repairs in exchange for a discount. Earl shrugged. "Sure. Got more work than I can handle anyway. Hands like yours will be useful." Jack turned to Victoria as Earl led him to the workshop. "Stay in the diner across the street. I'll come get you when we're done." Victoria hesitated but nodded, crossing the street to the quaint little diner. Its neon sign flickered weakly, and the smell of coffee and freshly baked pie wafted. Through the open door, she slid into a booth by the window, her phone in hand, though she hesitated to turn it on. As the hours dragged on, Victoria's thoughts spiraled. Her mind replayed the call, the assistant's frantic voice revealing the leak and its implications. Someone inside her company, someone she had trusted, was feeding sensitive information to her enemies. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the table as a bitter thought surfaced. Had she been blind to their motives, or had she been too focused on staying ahead to notice the cracks forming beneath her? She stared at her phone, her chest tightening. Turning it on felt like opening Pandora's box, but running wasn't an option anymore. If she wanted to end this, she needed to face the truth, no matter how ugly it was. Her thumb hovered over the power button when the bell above the diner door jingled. She looked up instinctively, her breath catching as a tall, shadowy figure entered. The man was dressed in a dark jacket, his cap pulled low over his face. He scanned the room briefly before walking toward the counter. Victoria's heart raced as he placed an order, his voice low but distinct enough for her to catch. A faint accent. He glanced around again, his gaze lingering on her a second too long. Victoria swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. Was he one of them, or was her paranoia getting the better of her? The man finished his order and walked toward her table. She tensed, her hand slipping under the table to clutch her phone like a lifeline. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Victoria forced herself to meet his gaze, trying to mask her fear. "Actually, I'm waiting for someone," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. The man smirked, leaning slightly closer. "You sure about that?" Before she could respond, the diner door opened again. Jack stepped inside, his presence commanding as his eyes immediately found Victoria. He took in the scene, the man leaning toward her, Victoria's rigid posture, and his jaw tightened. "Everything all right here?" Jack asked, his voice calm, but carrying an unmistakable edge. The man straightened, his smirk fading. "Just making conversation," he said, backing off slightly. Jack moved to stand between Victoria and the stranger, his gaze never leaving the man's face. "She's not interested," he said flatly. The man raised his hands in mock surrender, his smirk returning. "Relax, buddy. No harm done." He turned and left the diner, but not before casting one last glance over his shoulder. Jack watched him go, his fists clenched at his sides. When the door finally swung shut, he turned to Victoria. "You okay?" Victoria nodded, though her hands were still trembling. He knew," she whispered. "He knew who I was." Back in the truck, Victoria sat in silence as Jack drove. Them out of town, the repaired vehicle running smoothly now. The confrontation had rattled her, but it had also steeled her resolve. "I can't keep running," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. Jack glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "What are you saying? I need to face this," she replied. "Whoever's behind this, they've already taken too much from me. I'm not letting them take any more." Jack nodded slowly, his respect for her growing. "All right," he said. "What's the plan?" Victoria hesitated, then turned to him. "I'll need your help," she admitted. Jack chuckled dryly. Figured as much. Despite the tension, a small smile tugged at Victoria's lips. "Thank you," she said softly. Jack's grip on the wheel tightened, his resolve matching hers. "We'll figure it out, but if we're doing this, we're doing it smart." As the truck disappeared down the highway, the lights of the small town fading in the distance, Victoria felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't alone. The city skyline loomed ahead as Jack's truck navigated the bustling streets. Victoria sat silently in the passenger seat, her jaw clenched, her hands resting tensely in her lap. The weight of her decision to return to her company was evident. In every line of her posture, Jack stole a glance at her, his steady presence grounding her as she prepared to confront the storm awaiting her. "You sure about this?" Jack asked, his voice calm but edged with concern. Victoria nodded, though the flicker of doubt in her eyes betrayed her apprehension. "I can't keep running. If I don't take control now, I might never get another chance." Jack didn't press further. He had come to trust her resolve, even if he didn't fully understand the world she was stepping back into. The truck stopped a block away from her company's sleek glass headquarters. Victoria had insisted on keeping her return as discreet as possible. She tugged her coat tighter around her, glancing up at the towering building that represented both her achievements and her current peril. "Stay close," she said, her voice soft but resolute. Jack gave a small nod. "I'm not going anywhere." As Victoria entered through a side entrance, she avoided the main lobby where cameras and curious eyes might catch her. The security staff she passed barely acknowledged her, thanks to the careful arrangements she'd made with her trusted assistant Claire. Inside the elevator, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Victoria's office was exactly as she had left it. Pristine, minimalist, yet undeniably commanding. The city stretched out beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a view she had once found empowering, but now seemed distant and cold. Claire greeted her with a relieved expression, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun. "Thank God you're back," she said in a hushed tone. "It's been chaos since you left." Victoria gestured for her to close the door. "I need answers, Claire. Who's behind this?" Claire hesitated, glancing at the tablet in her hands. "I've been digging. But whoever's orchestrating this is good. They've covered their tracks well. The leaks point to someone high up, but I can't pinpoint who." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Start with the board members. Look into recent transactions, meetings, anything unusual." Claire nodded. "I've already flagged a few discrepancies. I'll send them to your private server." "Good. And Claire—" Victoria's voice softened. "Be careful. Whoever this is won't hesitate to go after anyone in their way." While Victoria worked tirelessly in her office, Jack remained in the nearby parking lot, his truck parked inconspicuously. He had insisted on staying close, just in case things went sideways. Sitting in the driver's seat, Jack kept an eye on the building's entrances. The buzz of his phone broke the monotony. It was a message from Victoria. "I'm okay, still working. Thank you for being here." Jack smiled faintly, his fingers hovering over the screen before he replied, "Always." He leaned back, his thoughts drifting to Emma. She was safe with a neighbor he trusted, blissfully unaware of the danger her father was navigating. Jack felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. Right now, keeping Victoria safe was his priority. Hours later, as the city lights illuminated the darkened sky, Victoria stood outside the conference room where she had called an emergency meeting. Inside sat the board member she had come to. Suspect, Daniel Harris, a polished man with an easy smile that belied his cutthroat nature. Victoria entered, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Harris looked up, his expression unreadable. "Victoria," he said smoothly. "Back so soon. I thought you were taking some personal time." "Cut the act, Daniel," Victoria said, her tone sharp. "I know what you've been doing." Harris leaned back in his chair, his smirk infuriatingly calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," Victoria snapped, stepping closer. "The leaks, the sabotage, it all leads back to you." Harris's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "You can't prove anything," Victoria smiled coldly. "Not yet, but I will." For a moment, neither of them spoke, the tension thick in the air. Then Harris leaned forward, his voice dropping. "You should have stayed away, Victoria. You don't understand the kind of people you're dealing with." "Enlighten me," Victoria said, crossing her arms. Harris hesitated, then sighed. "They're bigger than you, bigger than me. They don't care about collateral damage. If you keep pushing, you'll regret it." Victoria's stomach churned, but she refused to show fear. "Let them come," she said firmly. "I won't let them win." As Victoria left the meeting, her hands shook slightly, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She returned to her office, where Claire handed her a new set of documents, proof of Harris's connections to the group targeting her. The evidence wasn't complete, but it was enough to start turning the tide. When she finally returned to the truck, Jack was waiting, his steady presence grounding her once again. He didn't ask questions, sensing the weight of what she had. Just faced. "I need to take this further," Victoria said, her voice low but determined. "If I want to protect everything I've built and everyone I care about, I need to end this." Jack nodded, his expression serious. "Then let's make a plan." As the truck pulled away from the glowing city skyline, Victoria felt a spark of hope. With Jack by her side, she wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. The city skyline was dazzling at night, a sea of twinkling lights that reflected the energy and ambition of those who lived within it. Jack adjusted his tie for the third time as he stepped out of the truck, his discomfort with the evening ahead written plainly across his face. Emma, on the other hand, looked thrilled, her eyes wide with excitement as she held Jack's hand. "Daddy, look at that building!" she exclaimed, pointing to the towering glass structure adorned with sparkling lights. Jack glanced up, suppressing a sigh. "It's something, all right," he muttered. Victoria had insisted on inviting them to the corporate gala, promising it. Was both a celebration and an opportunity to strengthen their alliance against the forces working against her. Jack wasn't entirely convinced, but he knew she wouldn't have asked if it wasn't important. "Are we really going to meet a bunch of fancy people?" Emma asked, tugging on Jack's hand. Jack smiled down at her. "Seems like it." As they stepped into the grand ballroom, Jack couldn't help but feel out of place. The room was adorned with glittering chandeliers, sleek marble floors, and elegantly dressed attendees mingling over glasses of champagne. A string quartet played softly in the corner, adding to the sophisticated ambience. Emma, dressed in a simple yet lovely dress Victoria had sent for her, looked around in awe. "Daddy, it's like a fairy tale," Jack chuckled nervously. "Yeah, something like that." Victoria appeared moments later, descending a grand staircase like the star of the evening. She wore a flowing emerald gown that caught the light with every step, her confidence radiating despite the turmoil she had faced. Spotting Jack and Emma, she made her way over, her expression softening. "You both made it," she said, her voice warm. Jack nodded, feeling a little more at ease in her presence. "Wouldn't miss it." Victoria crouched slightly to meet Emma's gaze. "You look beautiful tonight, Emma." Emma beamed. "Thank you. Daddy helped me with my hair." Victoria's eyes flicked to Jack, a smile tugging at her lips. "Well, he did a wonderful job." As the evening progressed, Victoria took the stage, a microphone in hand. The room quieted as she addressed the crowd, her poised demeanor commanding attention. Tonight, we celebrate not just the success of our company, but the resilience and dedication of everyone who makes it possible, she began, her voice steady and clear. But I also want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who reminded me of the importance of integrity, kindness, and courage. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room until it landed on Jack. Jack Carter, she said, her voice softening, has shown me what it truly means to stand by what's right, even in the face of danger. He's been a reminder that strength comes not just from power or position, but from character. Jack felt the weight of the room's eyes on him as a wave of quiet murmurs rippled through the crowd. He shifted uncomfortably, but managed a small nod in Victoria's direction. The applause had barely subsided when a commotion broke out near the entrance. Jack's instincts kicked in as he saw a man pushing through the crowd, his demeanor aggressive. Dressed in a suit like the other attendees, he might have passed for a guest, if not for the tense set of his shoulders and the way his eyes darted around the room. Jack's hand instinctively moved to guide Emma behind him. Victoria noticed the shift in his posture and followed his gaze. "Do you recognize him?" she whispered. Jack nodded grimly. "He was at the diner. He's one of them." Before Victoria could respond, the man's voice rang out, loud and sharp. "Victoria! Langston!" The room fell silent, all eyes turning to the source of the disturbance. The man moved closer, his hand slipping inside his jacket. Jack didn't wait to see what he was reaching for. "Stay here," he told Victoria firmly, then moved swiftly through the crowd, his focus unshakable. The man barely had time to react before Jack reached him, grabbing his wrist and twisting it sharply. A small, concealed weapon clattered to the floor, drawing gasps from the onlookers. "Not here," Jack growled, his voice low but commanding. The man struggled briefly but soon realized he was outmatched. Jack's grip was like iron, and his steady composure left no room for negotiation. Security guards rushed in moments later, escorting the man out of the ballroom. The room slowly returned to normal, though a faint undercurrent of unease lingered. Jack returned to Victoria and Emma, his expression unreadable. "Are you okay?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jack nodded. "He won't bother you again tonight, but this isn't over." Victoria's gaze softened as she reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Thank you," she said quietly. Emma peeked out from behind Jack, her eyes wide. "Daddy, are you a superhero?" Jack chuckled, his tension easing slightly. "Something like that, kiddo." As the night wound down, Victoria found herself standing with Jack on the balcony, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the warmth of the ballroom. "I didn't expect that," Victoria admitted, her voice barely above. A whisper. Jack leaned against the railing, his gaze on the city lights. "You should always expect the unexpected, especially now." Victoria nodded, her thoughts heavy. "I'm starting to think I couldn't do this without you." Jack turned to her, his expression serious. "You're stronger than you think. But you don't have to do it alone." For a moment, they stood in silence, the unspoken connection between them stronger than words. The night had settled into a peaceful calm as Jack drove the truck through the quiet streets, the lights of the city fading into the distance. Emma sat in the back seat, humming softly to herself, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm. Beside Jack, Victoria stared out the window, her expression contemplative. The gala had ended on a high note, but the underlying tension from the confrontation lingered between them. "Thank you," Victoria said suddenly, her voice cutting through the silence. Jack glanced at her briefly. "For what?" "For everything," she replied. "For standing by me, for protecting me, for just being you." Jack returned his focus to the road. "I was just doing what needed to be done." Victoria smiled faintly. "You always say that, but it's more than that. Not many people would have put themselves on the line like you did." Jack didn't respond immediately, his grip on the steering wheel tightening slightly. You're stronger than you think, Victoria. You could have handled it. Maybe, she admitted. But it feels a lot less lonely knowing someone's in my corner. They arrived at Jack's modest home a short while later. The warm, familiar sight of the porch light made Emma perk up. "Daddy, can I have some hot cocoa before bed?" she asked, her voice tinged with hope. Jack chuckled. "You've had a big night, kiddo. Cocoa it is." As Emma scampered inside, Jack and Victoria lingered on the porch. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine. Victoria leaned against the railing, her gaze thoughtful. "Jack," she began, her tone serious, "I know you're a proud man, but I want to help you." Jack frowned slightly, crossing his arms. "Help me how?" "I see how hard you work to give Emma a good life," Victoria said. "And I know how much you've sacrificed. You deserve a break, resources, opportunities, whatever you need to make things easier." Jack's jaw tightened. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to be anyone's charity case." "It's not charity," Victoria said firmly. "It's gratitude. It's me recognizing that you've done more for me than I could ever repay, and I want to pay it forward." Jack looked away, the weight of her words settling over him. "I've always handled things on my own. It's not easy to just accept help." "I understand," Victoria said softly, "but think about it, for Emma's sake, if not for your own." The front door creaked open and Emma peeked out, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Miss Victoria?" Victoria turned, her expression softening. "Yes, Emma, are you going to stay with us?" Emma asked, her wide eyes filled with innocent curiosity. Jack stiffened, his gaze darting to Victoria. Victoria crouched down to Emma's level, smiling gently. "I'm not sure, sweetie, but I'll always be here to help you and your dad no matter what." Emma tilted her head, considering this answer, then nodded. "Okay, but I think Daddy likes having you around." Jack cleared his throat, the back of his neck heating. "All right, Emma, time for cocoa and then bed." Emma grinned and scampered. Back inside, leaving the adults in a slightly awkward silence, Victoria stood, brushing her hands against her dress. "She's quite the little negotiator," she said with a soft laugh. Jack chuckled, the tension easing slightly. "She's got a way of getting what she wants, that's for sure." Victoria's smile faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "Jack, I don't want to overstep, but have you thought about what's next? For you, for Emma?" Jack leaned against the porch railing, his gaze distant. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've spent so much time just trying to get by. I haven't had much room to think about the future." Victoria hesitated, then took a small step closer. "Maybe we could figure it out together." Jack turned to her, his expression unreadable. "I'm not asking for anything right now," Victoria said quickly. "I know you have your own life, your own priorities, but I care about you, Jack and Emma. I think there could be something here, something worth exploring." Jack studied her for a moment, his gaze steady. "I don't want to make promises I can't keep," he said finally. "Emma comes first. Always." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Victoria replied. Jack nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Victoria smiled, a flicker of hope lighting her eyes. "That's all I'm asking." Later that night, as Jack stood in the quiet of the living room, watching Emma sleep on the couch with her stuffed rabbit, he found himself reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had brought Victoria into their lives. His world had been small, focused on survival and providing for Emma, but now everything felt different. There was a sense of possibility, a spark of something new. Jack exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he wasn't facing it alone. The morning sun poured through the windows of Jack's modest home, bathing the living room in a soft golden light. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, her stuffed rabbit perched on her lap as she hummed a tune and arranged her crayons on the coffee table. Jack stood in the kitchen, sipping his coffee, watching her with a small smile. The simple scene felt different now, as though a weight he hadn't realized he carried had been lifted. Life had fallen into a new rhythm after the gala. The dangers that had once loomed over them now seemed distant, replaced by a quiet but steady sense of hope. Jack still worked long hours at the gas station, but there was something more now, a spark of possibility he hadn't felt in years. Jack's phone buzzed on the counter, and he picked it up to find an email from a local contractor offering him a higher-paying position as a mechanic. It was a job he hadn't applied for, but one that fit his skills perfectly. He didn't need to ask to know who was behind it. Victoria had always been careful not to overstep, but her touch was unmistakable. Jack set the phone down with a sigh, a mix of gratitude and reluctance washing over him. Accepting help had never been easy for him, but he couldn't deny that her quiet efforts had made a difference. Emma's voice broke his thoughts. "Daddy, can I show you my picture?" Jack smiled and walked over, crouching beside her. She held up a drawing of 3 stick figures standing under a bright yellow sun. "That's you, me, and Miss Victoria," Emma explained proudly. Jack's chest tightened as he looked at the simple, heartfelt drawing. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, ruffling her hair. Emma tilted her head, studying his face. "Daddy, do you think Miss Victoria will come back soon?" Jack hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know, Emma. She has a lot of important things to take care of." "But she said she'd always help us," Emma said earnestly. "And I think she likes being with us." Jack chuckled softly. "You're pretty smart, you know that," Emma grinned. "You say that all the time." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a familiar black car pulled into the driveway. Jack stepped out onto the porch, his heart skipping a beat as Victoria emerged, her smile soft but radiant in the fading light. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her tone light but tentative. "You're always welcome here," Jack replied, his voice warm. Victoria walked up the steps, pausing a few feet away. "I wanted to check on you, on both of you," she said. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, and about what comes next." Jack leaned against the railing, his gaze steady. "And?" Victoria's smile wavered, but her eyes held a quiet determination. "I don't want to overstep, Jack, but I meant what I said, about wanting to help. Not just with work or resources, but with whatever this is." She gestured vaguely between them, her cheeks flushing slightly. Jack looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. "I don't know what the future looks like, Victoria, but I know one thing. You've changed it." Victoria's shoulders relaxed, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "So have you," she replied softly. From inside, Emma's voice called out, "Miss Victoria, are you staying for dinner?" Victoria laughed, the sound light and genuine. "If it's all right with your dad," she called back. Jack smiled, stepping aside to let her in. "We'd be happy to have you." As the evening unfolded, Jack found himself watching Victoria and Emma interact, their laughter filling the room. For the first time in years, his home felt fuller, warmer. He couldn't predict what tomorrow would bring, but for now, this moment was enough. After dinner, as Emma drifted off to sleep on the couch, Jack and Victoria stepped onto the porch, the night air cool and quiet around them. "She's incredible," Victoria said, her gaze fixed on the stars above. "She is," Jack agreed. "She's my world." Victoria turned to him, her expression serious. "I want to be part of that world, Jack, if you'll let me." Jack's heart swelled, the walls he had built around himself softening. "It's not just my choice," he said. "It's Emma's too." Victoria smiled. "She's already decided." Jack chuckled, shaking his head. "She's got a way of making things clear, doesn't she? They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken possibilities settling between them. As Victoria prepared to leave, Jack walked her to the car, his thoughts swirling. Before she got in, she turned to him, her eyes shining. "This isn't goodbye, Jack. It's just the beginning," he nodded, his voice steady. "We'll see where it takes us." Victoria smiled, her hand brushing against his briefly before she stepped into the car. Jack watched as the tail lights disappeared into the night, a sense of peace settling over him. Later, as he stood on the porch, gazing up at the stars, Jack reflected on how much his life had changed. It wasn't just Victoria's presence or the opportunities she had created. It was the kindness they had shown each other, the trust they had built. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Jack felt ready to face it, knowing he wasn't alone. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of courage, kindness, and unexpected connections. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Did this story inspire you, surprise you, or maybe even remind you of someone in your life? Your thoughts mean the world to us, and we can't wait to read them. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more heartwarming tales like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let's keep spreading positivity, one story at a time. Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next video.